Man, I've got certain information, all right? Certain things have come to light, and, you know, has it ever occurred to you that instead of, running around blaming me, given the nature of all this new shit, this could be a lot more complex. I mean, it might not be just such a simple,
What in God's holy name are you blathering about?
I really want to go over this in detail because I know all my subscribers are aware of this, and any other astute flat earther that would watch this video know this sort of pseudoscience information. But for any of those that would like to show this to a ball earth, curved ball earth, zealot, religious nut out there that I call them, and try to persuade them, the best way to do so is real science, which is observations. Okay? I tried to download this NASA video in order to show you the entire thing. But after looking through several pages of search results on YouTube, all I'm getting is segments of it or somebody else's rendition where they're speaking over the narrator from NASA. And NASA shows a little 1-minute clip, but they don't show it in totality. I broke this down years ago, and I'm sure other people have too, so they've decided to remove their audio. What I'd like to point out is the fact that during this video portion here, the man is talking about what we'd see, and then they show you what everyone sees, and it's symmetrical, or as if the sun was passing directly above this point. But in reality, everyone in North America faced south to view it, right? I went over this in other parts in this series. It's symmetrical, right? Everyone is seeing the reverse as far as the bite on the disk of the sun. But this guy doesn't explain any of that. That is where we observe the lies. I mean, after all, this is a $60 billion a month or a day organization, some crazy amount of money. They supposedly hire the best and the brightest, but all they give us is cartoon models of how this works. I would expect to see an AutoCAD rendition or a mechanical desktop 3D motion model. That's the problem. See, this is why they don't describe this or show it in that kind of detail, because at scale it breaks down, it doesn't work. They know that. That's why they won't explain why we see this. 40-something degrees north on the ball Earth, we shouldn't see parallax symmetrical. One side of the disk should be different than the one opposite, right? This is intuitive information. So I'm going to go through all the pseudoscientific explanations first, and then we'll get into the details.
The moon can only be between the Earth and the sun, possibly catching us in its shadow once about every 29.5 days. But the moon's orbit doesn't line it up perfectly between the Earth and the sun every time, because it's tilted by 5 degrees. Most of the time, the moon's shadow misses the Earth by going above it or below it. That reduces the chances to just twice each year, 6 months apart. But not even all of those chances work out, because the moon's orbit isn't perfectly circular. That means sometimes it's farther away from us than others, and if it happens to be far enough away that we see it too small to cover the sun completely, leaving a bright ring or annulus of sun around it, that's not a total solar eclipse, it's called an annular eclipse. The shadow that our moon casts on the Earth's surface isn't very wide. The 2017 eclipse shadow is about 65 miles wide as it crosses Nebraska. Not only that, but the center of the moon's shadow travels fast. It will enter the United States in Oregon at 12:16 p.m. our time. It gets to Alliance, Nebraska, a little more than a half an hour later at 12:49, and it reaches Lincoln at 1:02. It will exit the United States off the South Carolina coast at 1:49 p.m. our time. So, back to Lincoln. What will we see here? Starting at about 11:37 a.m., the moon will begin taking a bite out of the sun. The partial eclipse begins. The bite keeps getting bigger and bigger. A little past 1:02 p.m., the last of the sun disappears behind the moon. The last light of the sun, shining between two mountains or a crater rim on the moon, slowly vanishes.
They will go into great detail about Bailey's beads or balls, craters, and all these things that they force feed you to try to make you believe it's the moon. We know everything that we're talking about. See, you've got this diamond ring effect. Well, if that's true, then how come when you're viewing it from here, the diamond ring effect's on this side? Viewing it from here, it's up here on the north. It wouldn't be. If it's a crater causing the Bailey's beads, then it would be only on one certain position of the moon. It wouldn't be all over depending on your perspective. They show what you're going to see if you're standing here. They show what you see if you stand here, but they don't explain none of it. It doesn't make sense. How could the bite out of the sun come on this side and then the shadow be over here? Things that doesn't fit their storyline, they won't talk about. They'll show it to you, but then won't even go into detail about it because they can't make it fit their story.
That's called the diamond ring effect. When it completely disappears, that's your signal that you can look directly at the eclipse with no protection for your eyes.
This here is irrefutable proof, folks, that we've been lied to about the solar eclipse. On the right-hand side, you can see it says 4 times speed Omaha, and here in the main it says Beatrice time lapse, 4 miles south of Crete, I believe. Look at this. It's coming from the opposite. You see that? Omaha, it's coming from the southwest. Beatrice, it's coming from the northeast. The shadow on the face of the sun. This contradicts what they tell you. They won't mention this. They won't talk about how that happens because it doesn't fit the lie they are trying to get us all to believe. This is the center line. This is just south of the center line of totality. And this is north of the line of totality. You can go here to this channel and watch the entire video if you want. I just want to use it for a demonstration. I enjoy using real science, which is observations, to prove the point, okay? And it's in the details that they don't talk about and hardly show you. You have to look for them where you find the lie. Like old web pages never mentioned laser rangers on the moon or any of these computer programs as to the description for how they calculate the occurrence and the sizes of the total solar eclipses. But all these old web pages do describe, they're made from Soros cycle canons, which are spreadsheets, okay, compiled from ancient history, and observations. That's how they determine when and the accuracy of them. Now, as for the umbra penumbra shadow that I refer to as abracadabra, which is a term magicians use when they're hiding something, right? And then they're about to reveal it. Well, let me reveal the abracadabra truth here. Extended source, right? That would be what our sun is. It's not a point source. If you use a point source, you don't see the penumbra, right? But there's details that happen with this. And let's show you those details so that we can see how it works. I'm going to mute the audio here. Just play this for you so you can see how this would work. You see the umbra penumbra shadow, right? Notice how the penumbra shadow increases as this gets closer to what would be the Earth, and the umbra shadow decreases. Now that's opposite what we see as far as the umbra shadow. Whenever it's close, when you look into the details of the distance of the sun and the moon to the Earth during these different eclipses, that's where you see that this type of thing doesn't add up. The umbra penumbra shadow doesn't match what we should see, giving how it actually works in the real world. We don't see it perform the way it should. For example, when you see this moon ball, I'll call it, get close to the surface of this Earth, this white paper here, you see the umbra size shrink. But if you investigate the eclipse shadows, when they claim the moon is closer to the Earth, that shadow increases, okay? But then the penumbra shadow doesn't match what it should do either, okay? Say opposite things always seem to occur when you investigate this stuff. So as you notice, when this ball gets closer to the sheet or to the Earth, the penumbra size gets bigger, right? Many longtime flat earthers like myself had seen a video years ago by several really good flat earth video creators depicting a lens right here between the moon ball and the Earth, where I've got the cursor, and it was where they would depict a converging lens that would act like the firmament and make the shadow this little tiny thing that they're calling an umbra. And I believe the video footage was from like University of Minnesota optics or lens class. Anyhow, ball earthers can't stand that because, you know, anything that goes to proving the Bible, they just can't stand. But I wanted to let you know about that in case you hadn't seen it. You can go searching for it.
Here we have a converging lens and a diverging lens. Each has an object in front of it. In each diagram, there are 3 rays coming from the tip of the object striking the lens. Converging lens converges light, so the paraxial ray is going to get bent and go to the focal point. So this ray is going to go through the focal point this way. The ray that goes to the center is going to go straight, keep going. So this ray is going to keep going. The ray that goes through the focal point is going to get reflected parallel to the principal axis. Because the light rays are retraceable, the ray that comes in parallel to the principal axis is going to get bent through this focal point. So the ray that goes through the focal point is going to get refracted and bent parallel to the principal axis. The 3 rays meet here, so this is where the image is formed. Since this image is formed by the real light rays meeting over here, we get a real image.
Now, to prove that it's a fable, all you have to do is look into the details of the eclipses, right? That's what I said. So if you take the 2071 eclipse and you go to the Google map, right there's the website, look at the size of the penumbra. Now I'm observing 2 different Soros cycles, which as I've stated, there's 39 of them with these distinctive shaped paths and different umbra diameters, okay? Meaning, in my simple mind, they're different objects occulting the sun. And you can prove this because this penumbra diameter doesn't correlate to what it should, okay? So there's the 91. We're comparing 91 to 2071 because they pass over the same geographic area on Earth. So we can't have astute curveball earthers claiming it's a difference in the geometry of the curved Earth. Size is 160 miles in diameter. It's Soros 136. Note, descending node, and it's descending. Okay, they don't always do that. Right? Now look at this. It extends to just above there and there. So they're virtually the same. They're the same shadow diameter. That shouldn't be, considering this umbra shadow is only 72 miles wide. Right? That means the penumbra should be quite a bit larger, but it's not. It's virtually the same. Okay? That shouldn't be, folks. This is the details that expose the lie for what it is. The truth is often omitted. That's where you find the lies. How many times have we heard over the past year or more, trust the science, follow the science? Well, here is real science on the jab topic. I won't go into it because I don't want my video banned, but here's a couple good ones on my channel here that go into that real well. Since we're going to follow real science and not pseudoscience on this topic, let's go with what real science is boiled down at its basis. It's observations, repeatable observations. So let's take the observations in 91. At this time, it would have began, okay, at this latitude, right, in the north, central latitude. And then 3 hours and 22 minutes later, it would have ended right here, okay? This path here in 2071 begins at 1538 and ends at 1900, okay? Now that we know both of them started and ended at, and the total length was 3 hours 22 minutes. I've already shown in previous parts that this path doesn't correlate to the movement of the moon, meaning if the moon's ascending, the path should go up. Descending, it should go down. It's good to note that the 91 path is a descending node path, and of course the path is descending. But then the 2071 path to the right here is on an ascending node, and it's following the same path as the one on the descending node. So how does curveball Earth and sphere geometry play into the opposite nature of what they should be doing? Okay? Think about this. A lot of them are vice versa. So this is the 1991 path over here. This is the 2071 path over here. I've lined up these markers here, north and south, at the edges of the penumbra shadow. I get confused with this abracadabra stuff. But anyhow, since they both passed over Mexico, I went north and south of that part of the path. So we're comparing apples to apples here. I don't want people saying, well, it's a different part of the curveball Earth, yada, yada, yada. We've already shown you that both path lengths are identical. They last the same amount of time on the ground, 3 hours, 22 minutes. Now, the problem here is these paths look like they're the same size from top to bottom, right? They shouldn't be. Just wanted to show you the coordinates of these markers so you can see where I was measuring as compared to what I'll show you in Google Earth. So now, if our ball Earth pseudoscience was true, then the penumbra of this shadow should be significantly different in size from this one. They shouldn't match. These are the details that belie the model, that show it to be false. But you got to question what you're being shown. I want to try to take a play from Rupert Sheldrake's playbook, if you will, from the TED Talk that I showed in part 3 of this series, where he scrutinized what he deemed the science delusion with the principles of science to see how well these theories stacked up with reality. Let's do that with the umbra penumbra shadow, which I like to refer to as the abracadabra shadow. And put them in Google Earth here in a line and compare the lengths of those lines to see, all right? The paths are different because they're different Soros, just like the umbra size shadow is different because they're different Soros numbers, or one of the 39 different objects occulting the sun, as a flat earth professional would call it, not a ball earth zealot who wants to pretend it's the moon. We're going to explain how this defies real science, the observations that are made with the umbra penumbra shadow here on Earth using symmetrical spheres. Like I said, we're going to draw a line and measure those lines for all those points and compare them. So here you can see the dimensions that I came up with on the 91 penumbra shadow width from top to bottom and the 2071. So they're not exact, but they're within a couple hundred miles. And now that we know what we've learned about the umbra penumbra shadow with a sphere and how they should be adjusted accordingly, if this path is more than double this one, we should get quite a bigger difference than just a couple hundred miles. Of course, I'm not exactly lined up. It could be a little bit bigger because I'm not straight up and down over top of this line here, but it's close enough that you can see it's not as big a difference as we should see given the size difference in these two shadows. Another oddity I wanted to point out here, the moon is on a descending node but produces an ascending path on the ball Earth. I know it's within the realm of possibility that this could occur because you could see the dark shadow here up here, but since it's near the the solstice, it's highly unlikely that you could get a total solar eclipse up near the North Pole, right, in March. But anyhow, you know, everything's within the realm of possibility here. I know a religious globe zealot would say, oh yeah, that's perfectly all right, that makes sense. I've tried to go down here and look at the South Pole region. Of course, we can't independently check anything south of latitude 65. No independent travel is allowed, so verifying any of this would be out of the realm of possibility. But of course, anything south of 68-degree parallel never shows up when these dates that it shouldn't, like from June 3rd I think July 4th or something, when they supposedly have total darkness below the 68th parallel. So I've not seen any anomalies like that that would completely bust the ball, but while researching for oddities of the solar eclipse, note for folks that this fella here, Mr. Fred, is said to be by NASA the eclipse expert and responsible for all predictions. Funny how a multi-billion-dollar-a-day organization puts one guy in charge of all that information, but anyone that wants to poo-poo this website know that it's got the full backing of the U.S. government behind it. And I landed on Soros 119, as they claim the Soros is a useful organizing tool for families or series of eclipses. Nothing different about the number of eclipses, only that it has several dozen central eclipses, which is strange. They go like straight across the ball Earth. very odd path because normally they don't do that. But what I really found strange was the fact that it only has 2 total eclipses in the whole thing. Rest of them are partial and annular. That's another oddity you don't see with these eclipses. And I went through and looked at every one of them. The really odd thing about these total solar eclipses is they occurred at the pole, the polar region. If I can find it here, right here. Look at this. They both occurred at the pole, the total solar eclipses. What we know about these, according to MIT professors or any prestigious university, including NASA themselves, the total solar eclipse aligns when all 3 space balls achieve syzygy or are lined up on the ecliptic plane. Not when the moon is at a so-called, not near a so-called node, but on the node. Partial eclipses occur when the moon is said to be near a node. Only totals happen at the node, so why the 2 total eclipses in this series only occur at the poles is another oddity. That would be where you'd expect to see the partial eclipses at the poles. But here we don't see it. And they're both ascending nodes. Now, another oddity I found was, look here, we have a partial solar eclipse June 16th. That makes perfect sense, right? Because the Earth ball is tilted toward the sun in June. Now look at this one. We have a partial solar eclipse June 13th at the South Pole. How can that be? That makes absolutely no sense. The same month, 2 different poles? Come on now, something's wrong. An avid ball Earth zealot has tried to show me where an ascending path could create a descending path on the ball Earth. But you should note, all eclipse paths on Saros 119 occur on the ascending node. So it totally blows your ball Earth belief to consider that you would have a June partial eclipse at the North Pole and also a June partial eclipse at the South Pole on an ascending node. That contradicts your model completely. Yet just another proof of why Jesus told us that the eclipses would be the only sign given. It is all the proof you need that this ball Earth is a lie. Now, keep that in mind in the next month or so when they're going to release the proof of aliens. And when you see SpaceX land on Mars, or Jeff Bezos showing that he's putting people in space, remember all these things. It's impossible, folks. TV is not reality. I like to use examples of the distance or size of the umbra shadow when compared to it going at about the same time period over the same territory. So it's passing near Oregon, which the total solar eclipse of 2017 went through in August, and I was curious what the distance to the Earth was on this date. I did a couple searches. I couldn't find anything as far back as they go as 1600. If Brother Paul's calculator works, I'd love to know the distance the Earth was on that date and time, just for comparison, you know, because I know this eclipse here produced a shadow of 160 kilometers, 161 kilometers, I guess, 100-mile wide path on that date and time. So I'd really like to check into that. I can't really verify the distance of the sun and the moon for the Saros 119 cycles. Again, we know if their Saros number ends in an odd number, it's an ascending path. But since the paths that I'm going to show here from Soros 119 pass over the same territory on the ball Earth. I wanted to compare, but I can't really determine where the moon and the sun were when these happened, but I did want to show it to you since I'm on the topic. This one here, the path is 122 mile wide on the 2024 eclipse, and here 1355, you can see it's passing over the US a little bit further east, and this is an annular. So it would be nice to know where the sun and the moon are, because as we're told, the moon must be closer. And since it's around the same time of the year, I would assume the moon might be in the same general area or distance from the Earth ball. So it would be nice to compare, but if anyone knows of the distance, you can hit me up with the trusted source on that time for those distances. Please leave it in the comments and I'll update. But anyhow, they show down here that the path width is 196, so it's virtually the same. Again, here's another similar trajectory, this time almost lining up with the one that's going to occur in 2024 over North America, and not around the same time of the year. This one's in February, but it's a little bigger, 225 kilometers. So again, that might show you, if you could find out the distance of the sun and moon, rather odd anomaly, how an annular eclipse shadow casts a wider umbra path on the Earth than the 2024 total solar eclipse will. Again, the last one I want to show is this one from January. Okay. It's casting, again, an annular eclipse, which means that the moon is closer to the sun and the path is 233 kilometers, bigger than the total eclipse path of 2024. The anomalies of our model expose the lie. Now I want to go ahead and examine the differences between these two total solar eclipses, 1901 and 2024. First, I want to note that this path occurs near the equator, and that is significant because an umbra shadow should be smaller when it's directly on, like the equator, right? Straight on, versus it should be longer or a wider diameter when it's on the so-called curve of the ball Earth, right? It elongates. Normal shadows, that's what they would do on a sphere, right? Now, don't take my word for it, go and check it out. But for brevity's sake, I'm not going to show moon calc and sun calc and the dimensions where this is. I'm just going to tell you, if you don't trust me, go check it yourself. But look at this. This path here, 1901, is 147 mile wide diameter umbra shadow. This one here is 122 mile wide umbra shadow. Now that's 25 mile wide bigger shadow here at the equator. The distance of the moon to the Earth in the 2024 total solar eclipse is said to be 223,521 miles. The distance of the moon to the Earth in 1901 was 223,369 miles. That's a difference of only 152 miles. So we can't say, for sake of argument, that the moon is essentially the same. So the only difference can be the sun. This sun here is said to be 955,906 miles further away from the Earth than it is here. Okay? What we know about shadows on Earth, if you do an experiment, a demonstration, real science, you'd find that if you take a light and you cast and make it closer to the object that you're going to cast a shadow on, the shadow gets bigger. But here's another anomaly that is always different when it comes to these magical space balls. It's opposite. See, the one that has the further light source away from the object actually has the bigger shadow, and it should be smaller. Again, another proof this is all fake, folks. I know I'm kind of sounding like a broken record here, but I'm trying to be as exhaustive as possible because there's ballers, zealots that want to claim silly stuff like, oh, it's the distance of the sun to the moon and the moon to the earth, which accounts for all these variances. Look here, ascending node, descending path. Descending node, descending path. Almost the same area, okay? Now, if anyone knows of a trusted source for the sun and moon distance at this date and time, again, please hit me up in the comments. Just want to point out, this shadow here on this total eclipse is 70-mile wide diameter. This one, 169-mile wide, okay? These anomalies bust your ball earth belief. That's why I'm going over them. Sorry for the barrage, but, let there be no doubt. It's not just some anomalies. They're everywhere you look. I've not looked that long.